The City Council meeting for the City of Wyoming, Minnesota, January 4th, 2022. Let the record reflect, we do have a quorum. Member Luger, Member Onstead, Member Yeager, and Mayor Iverson are present. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So first thing on our agenda tonight is actually our annual meeting, and we'll start with number 1, designate official newspaper for the 2022, the Forest Lake Times. That's resolution 22-0101. Mr. Linwood, are you going to talk about each one of these?
I certainly can, Mayor, members of the council. The first item tonight for the annual meeting is just the designation of our official newspaper. This is necessary via Minnesota state statute. The Forest Lake Times has been the city's acting official newspaper, and that was the only newspaper we received a bid from. Nothing has changed or price increases this year for any of our advertisements or for our legal notices.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from council? If there's none, we need a motion to approve resolution 22-0101. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Luger. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Number 2 on the agenda, designate official depository for city funds for 2022. Resolution 22-01-02. Mr. Linwood.
Mayor, members of the council, once again, this is a state statute and an annual meeting item. Minnesota State Statute 427-01.12 states that the city must identify all its official depositories for 2022. There is a resolution attached that identifies the First State Bank of Wyoming, PMA, RBC Wealth Management, and the 4M Fund as the 4 different institutions the city utilizes.
Okay, questions or comments from council? Seeing none, we need a motion to approve resolution 22-0102. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Onstad. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Luger. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Number 3, designate electronic fund transfers and payments for claim, resolution 22-0103. Mr. Linwood.
Yes, Mayor, members of council, this is a new item this year for our annual meeting, and this is per the suggestion of the city auditor. It's just a resolution that will be an annual exercise in designating authority to myself or designee, but that will be myself for any kind of electronic fund transfers or payments of claims prior to your board action. If there is an electronic claim or transfer, it would still need to go before the council at your normal claims at the next city council meeting. Examples of this would be things like when we have bond payments. Those can be quite large, where maybe we have a $350,000 bond payment, and we'll hold off until that very last day to pay it to keep that money in our accounts working until we have the absolute last day. So just best practice has been identified by our auditor to add this to our annual.
Okay, great. Questions or comments from council?
I have a question. Will this be, if you do an electronic transfer before the meeting, will you flag it on the claims register so that we know that an electronic transfer was performed before the meeting?
We can. I'll make a point. I'm not sure we can with the software, but we can anytime. Really, the only things that we use electronic transfer for would be those bond payments, which we will have quite a few here in the upcoming February, first or second meeting in February. So I don't know if we can with the software, but I'll make a point to identify those to the council.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, we do need a motion to approve resolution 22-0103. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Luger. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Number 4, elect an acting mayor to serve in absence of mayor during 2022, Minnesota Statute 412.121. Mr. Linwood?
Mayor, members of council, once again, this is a statutory requirement. This is just necessary to elect that acting mayor in absence of our normal mayor at any of our boards or excuse me, at any of our council or special council meetings during the 2022 year. So with that, you should have discussion or make motion for an individual to be that acting mayor for 2022.
Okay. I would like to make a motion for Member Luger for this year. Anybody else want to
I
make a
will
motion?
second.
You'll second that? Linda, do you have a motion?
No.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to approve the acting mayor as member Luker in case of my absence during 2022. Do we have a motion to approve? I'll make the first motion. How's that? And you made the second. We're all good.
Okay.
That was fast. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So approved. I should have asked if you wanted to do that. Sorry,
Yeah, I'd be
Claire.
honored. Sounds great.
You did such a good job.
It's been decided.
Great.
No backseas.
Thank
I
you.
don't-
All right, number 5. Review council appointments to boards, commissions, committees, and Board of Trustees of Fire Department Volunteer Relief Association. Resolution 22-0104. Mr. Linwood?
Mayor, council members, once again, this is just an annual item to just make those appointments for our committees, boards, and then our relief association. Also, we have a couple letters from seats that have expired on both our planning commission and our EDA, and those are attached to this document as well.
Okay. Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve Resolution 22-0104?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by member Onstad. I'll make that second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So approved. Number 6, establishing a 2022 regular meeting nights of the City Council of the City of Wyoming and budget calendar for the 2023 budget. Any questions or comments from council?
Yes, I have one. I believe November 1st is Election Day.
It's the second Tuesday, November 8th.
Okay. All right, I thought it was the first Tuesday.
I'll confirm that, council member, but I'm fairly certain, but I'll confirm that. November 8th, election day for 2022.
Okay.
All right. If there are no further questions or comments, we need, do we need to vote on that? It's
You
not a
should-
resolution?
No,
Okay.
you should make a motion on
Do
it,
we need-
please.
Do we need a motion, do we have a motion to approve the 2022 regular meeting nights of the City Council and the budget
So moved.
calendar? We have a motion to approve by member Luker. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Last, number 7, set annual fees for city services for 2022. Resolution 22-0105. Is that you or Mr. White?
Certainly I can. Mayor, members of council, once again, this is our 2022 fee schedule, and we've itemized and highlighted the changes within that. There are, from Chapter 10 building permits, there's a state requirement change from a building permit for a fence moving from 6 feet to 7 feet. Some of the description for police administrative fees for CDs has been replaced with electronic storage devices, just for modern practice. Per that we have now identified that for city officers to be utilized at outside city events, that there is something that has to go through the city. There is a wage that is the average wage of an officer with benefits, and then that minimum of 4 hours. Our utility section is an updated bit per our rate studies for both water, sewer, and stormwater. Office and administrative staff fees, there is a line item in there where it identifies that council packets may be mailed for $100 a year. We kind of went back and looked and see if we had any of those requests. We probably haven't had any for, we figured, around 7 to 10 years, and the $100 really wouldn't be applicable anymore due to the sheer volume of our council packets, that if that was something we wanted to keep, it would be much more significant to that, since we do 25 cents a copy and then plus staff time on that. And then last year, the council also passed printed material to try to be sustainable within the city and their resources. So we removed that from the packets, and lastly, that all of our packets are now available online. Our community center pavilion and free rental has been removed per the discussion in 21, just with the temporary offices in here, the electronic equipment in here, that has been removed as per that discussion we had at the council in 2021. And with that, I can stand for any questions or any other department heads that may have pertinent questions directed to them and
All right.
on their departments.
Do you have any questions from council?
No.
Seeing none, we need to approve Resolution 22-0105. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by member Onstad. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by member Luker. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Now on to our regular meeting, open forum. Open forum is an opportunity for members of the public to address the city council on items that is on or not on the current agenda. Items requiring council action may be deferred to staff or boards and commissions for research and future council agendas if appropriate. You will be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask that you conduct yourself in a professional, courteous manner and refrain from the use of profanity. Failure to abide by this policy may result in the loss of your privilege to speak. Do we have anybody here tonight that would like to speak? An open forum. It's a big crowd tonight, nobody? What's that?
I would like to speak. Is this the only time you're able to speak?
Yep, come on up,
Okay.
come on up and state your name.
Okay. Hello, my name is Holly Lance. I live on 4805 2061st Street, Wyoming. And I thought last Tuesday it was approved for the
Diamond Bridge?
Bridge.
Mhm.
But is it approved or not approved?
It hasn't been approved by council yet.
Okay, so I just had, is that council here tonight, or will there be another meeting?
That's us.
Okay,
Yep, so ask whatever questions you have.
okay, so I'd like to address the council, I thought the developer backed out. I reached out to my real estate agent, to try to purchase the next lot next to me. You know, if they weren't gonna build. Found out that the developer purchased 6 lots for $25,000, and his selling price was $300,000 for 6 lots. That's a huge increase, so my husband and I were not even able to afford 2 lots for $100,000. Like, we just don't have that type of money, or, you know, for investments, things like that. I was also told by my real estate agent that the developer would not budge on price. In my personal opinion, I don't see how Wyoming would profit from these 3 houses or the cul-de-sac. I'm also concerned about like the wildlife, the privacy. Also, it seems like with inflation, everything going on, corporates are taking over, like Amazon are taking over, developers are taking over. Cause they're just out to make money and not actually help the community. So, if it was like at a lower price, or if I was made out of money, I would like purchase it, you know, put a park in there or something for the children, like the traffic, cause you have the other developments with all those houses, then you have the upcoming development on the south side, on the freeway. There's a lot more open fields, where I think a developer can make a better profit or a better move. Maybe it's a bad investment. If there's no turning back and the council or the committee does approve it, I haven't seen the latest plans or
The plotting, yep.
the plotting
We'll have that
plans.
tonight.
But also like the back of our house, like we wouldn't want, or, and I don't think anyone would want, like the house in the back corner of like our view.
Mhm.
Like we'd rather have, if there has to be a house built there, more towards the west, maybe the west side. And then also, if they have to clear cut, obviously they're gonna have to clear cut for, I think it's still a cul-de-sac, right? On the plan.
Mr. Lou, would you like to address, or Mr. Weck? Okay, Mr. Weck, okay.
So, city ordinance allows them to, obviously they need to remove trees to build a street. It also allows them to remove trees within 10 feet of where the driveway and the house are gonna be. So those would be permitted removals. And that'd be same as any other house in the city being built,
So that's the
you
city,
you
city
can't.
ordinance, okay. So basically that would wipe out where the deer are gonna go, where the bear are gonna go, where the bird's gonna go. They're gonna go out in the street, someone's gonna go and say, God.
Yeah,
But
unfortunately, the city doesn't, or the council doesn't have, we can't tell the developer or the person selling the land how much to sell it for, and we
Yep.
can't also dictate how much they sell it for.
yeah.
Yeah.
I can see why.
Yeah, so that's we don't have any control over that. We do have the ordinances that Planning Commission has done and gone through, and that our engineers have gone through as well. So, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think that's the stated, understood the, the personal that you've gone in regard to how they required, but I think, and maybe Mr. Weck, as far as this development, this has been on numerous planning commission agendas, and I know that the applicant has worked with their engineer, with staff's engineer, to try to get a viable product, and it went from 6 houses to 3 houses to actually, I think, even something different, but the 3 house has been what we've seen here for probably the last 2 to 3 months for this, and there's been a period of time where they've had to act on this, and it did go to the planning commission, you're correct, last, and they did recommend approval to the city council, and they will review it though tonight, but I mean, it's appropriate is your opinions here on it, and as far as, some of the items that you've talked about, and if there's anything else that's appropriate to let the council know about that.
Like the kids, or, the community, or they can connect. That was the original plan, if you look at the old map, to that gravel road to.
When it was when there wasn't a cul-de-sac and it was a through road, or potential for a through road.
Through road.
When it comes up on the agenda, I can.
Address that.
We'll go a little bit of the history of what happened.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I think it had to do with like, basically erosion, wetlands, maybe stuff, I don't know, but, before it's approved, just wanted my last turn to try this out.
Yeah.
3 house development.
Well, we appreciate you coming in. Are you able to stay when we go through the presentation?
Yeah, cause,
Good.
I'm interested anyways,
Okay.
cause it does go through, I'm very interested in how all this stuff works.
Okay,
It's very educational.
great. All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate you being
Thanks for
here.
listening.
Is there anyone else who'd like to come up tonight? No? All right. Number 8 on our agenda is approval of minutes. Consider approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the Wyoming, Minnesota City Council for December 21st, 2021. If there are no comments or questions, we need a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Onstad. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Luger. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Consent agenda, number 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Are there any items the council wishes to pull? If there are not, then we need a motion to approve 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Luger. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. I would like to say, though, thank you to Commissioner Barb Williams on the Park Advisory Commission for her 4 years. And she had a lot of great ideas and added a lot to the commission, so we're going to miss her. All right. Acknowledge receipts of reports of officer, boards, commissions, and department heads. Number 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. I would like to pull number 14. Does anybody else wish to pull a report? No one else? All right. So number 14 is report of the Public Safety Director, Chief Bauer, for December 28th, 2021. Chief Bauer, there's some interesting language on there, some things that all the police officers are going to need to go through. I think it was Pulse is what you called it. Is that? So I'm kind of interested in, and maybe just let our residents know a little bit more about that report and what that's what that means, and just some of the 3 things that you listed on there, please.
Sure. On a regular basis, I believe it's every 3 years, the Post Board, which is the licensing organization that oversees licensing for police officers in the state, they come through and do audits in various different areas, and it's not set up to be a got you. It's a process that they go through to make sure that that these 3 areas are in compliance. So they review our policy manual and make sure that they are within the guidance of the model policies that are provided by the Post Board. And those can be in areas of like use of force and pursuits and those type of things. There's a list of those policies. And they also review and make sure that the mandatory training that's required by the state of Minnesota by statute is met as well. And then finally, that there is training in pursuit driving and emergency vehicle operation. So they go through and review training audits and making sure that those things have been met. They went through that process in November 2021 and determined that we were in compliance with those 3 areas.
Okay, and how long does it take for them to do that review? And do they just pull all the records, or what's the policies that they do to go through that?
Sure. So that was just prior to me being here, so I don't have all the
Okay.
details exactly, but that would require extracting training records, and those are maintained by staff on a regular basis to make sure that when these audits do come up, that it is an easier process. So the policy manual is a document that's adapted as the need arises. And they do, like I said, they do have a set of model policies that are provided for you to use to create policy. That doesn't mean that's all of them, but they just look at those that are mandatory by the state.
Okay, great. And then the other thing that you have on here is the crime analyst is conducting a complete audit on properties. Can you speak a little bit more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, we have approximately, I think it was 1,190, somewhere around there, items that are logged into our property system. So that could be contraband that's seized, could be drugs, could be fingerprint evidence, it could be a variety of different things. And we have to maintain those items in a secure environment and make sure, and we have an internal process that on an annual basis going through, we're going through this process, is to make sure that the items that are in our evidence room are in fact logged in the records management system, and that those things all match. And that's the easy part of it, is going through all those bins. The second part then will be to disposition those items that we don't need to maintain anymore, and that's a significant time investment. So she'll have to go through and look up each of the court cases to determine where they are in the process and determine what needs to happen with these items at that point, whether or not we need to maintain them for the court case is continuing, or if this is something that we can dispose of those items. And that will take more of a significant amount of time.
Okay,
So,
great.
yeah.
All right, does council have any questions?
I'm curious, 12,000 items,
1,200
1,200 items.
yes.
Is that a lot, and is that related to the backup of the court systems currently?
That would be the disposition of them will have impact on whether or not we can keep that, whether or not we have to maintain them. The idea is that you don't want to keep more than you have to. I mean, our space is limited, and it's a matter of there's only so many places to put things, just the logistics of that. So and we don't want to maintain things longer than we have to, just for the retention period. And if it's property that we have, maybe have seized because it has fingerprints on it or those type of things, we like to return those items to the owner as well. So it's that on a regular basis, if we can keep up on this, we do this full audit right now, and then on a more regular basis, we can just keep better tabs on it, and so it doesn't have to be as involved process.
More space would probably help.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things we worked through related to this today, over the last 2 days, was coming up with safe ways to process these things. When we're coming in with drugs and contraband and those type of things, how do we do that in a safe place where it's not where the officers are writing reports and where they're not eating lunch and those type of things? So we kind of move things around, and it's like, well, this will work for now. It's in the garage, and if the garage door opens, with fentanyl and all these things that we're seeing in drugs right now, that we want to make sure that the officers are able to do that in a safe place. So all kinds of processes we're working through with that right now too.
And Chief Bauer, did I hear that the state of Minnesota, there's a new law that says something about when we seize property, and there's a new law about how it has to go back to the people that we seize the property from? If you don't, I'll look that
I'm
up.
not sure.
Okay.
I can look into it too and let you know as well.
Yeah, I just thought there was a new law that was,
Yeah.
January 1st. So, and congratulations on your first report to the city council.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
all
it.
right. If there aren't any further questions, we're gonna move on to communications, which is number 19. East Viking Boulevard Improvement Project Open House and Public Hearing Letter Notice. Mr. Linwood or Mr. Erickson?
I can speak on this, council. It's just a communication to the council in regards to just a reminder that we have the neighborhood meeting for the East Viking project next Wednesday, January 12th. And then the letter also identifies to the different people on the project area of that public hearing on January 18th. So just a communication to keep the council, which I'm sure you have it on your calendars, but just to keep you aware.
Great. Are there any questions or comments? No? All right, we'll move on to number 20, Swenson Park ribbon cutting, July 15th, 2021 at 2 p.m. I am very excited about this, but Mr. Linwood, if you'd like to update us.
Sure. This is, as you know, the city was able to receive a matching grant from the Minnesota DNR for the redesign and the updating of this park. It will be our first official ADA compliant park within the city. Everything from access to the playground equipment to ball fields, to our the hockey rink, to the warming house. Now the doors have been widened to make that ADA accessible. Access to that pleasure rink throughout. So you'll see that new concrete slab out there. They have updated some of the playground equipment with some new equipment. We also have a brand new hockey board system that was installed that is, I have to say, is extremely nice, and it turned out really great. It has been, the rink has been extremely busy. I don't know if any of you have had an opportunity to go out there, but I think it was yesterday, there was about 50 kids out there in the middle of the day. So it's really been, I know, utilized a lot. And it always was a popular place. So it's exciting that it's really being utilized. And then lastly, just some of the burying of the wires out there and new LED lights for that system. But this is just a kind of a quick event just to kind of recognize that as that being that first ADA park, and the improvements have been done. So we're just going to have a ribbon cutting on Saturday the 15th at 2. So.
Great. I know I'm very excited to have an ADA compliant park. I mean, that's been on my goal for a long time. So yes.
You have 2021.
It is 2022.
It is for 2022. Thank you. All right, so mark your calendars for this year on January 15th on Saturday, right? At 2 p.m. No. So thank you very much for catching that.
I'd like to add that I'm excited about this. I was on the Park Advisory Commission when a lot of the talk and decisions were started. So I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, it should be a great day. So, all right, number 21, new business. To consider resolution 220108, a resolution approving the preliminary plot D-21-010, replot of Diamond Ridge by Beckman Custom Homes LLC, Charles Beckman, located at property ID number 21.00040.21.00040.06. Mr. Weck.
Madam Mayor and council members, the Diamond Ridge plat was originally platted in 2006. The final plat was approved and recorded, but the road and the public improvements were never done. The engineer drawings were not approved, and then the developer at that time went bankrupt. It went into foreclosure, and it was sold in a sheriff's sale. Mr. Beckman purchased it. Initially tried to make the original 6-lot development work. He couldn't make it work, both engineering-wise and financially. Looked at a couple of different other ways to do it, and what we have tonight is a 3-lot subdivision on a cul-de-sac. The engineering still hasn't been approved, but Mr. Erickson can attest that it's viable. The lots do meet the minimum requirements for the city. The Planning Commission is recommending approval of the plat with the conditions listed in the resolution.
Okay. Mr. Erickson, do you have anything you want to say to that?
I think Mr. Weck covered that pretty well. I'll just add that, we have reviewed a number of different submittals on this application, and the most recent still did not meet our standards or requirements, and we've provided some guidance and some recommendations on how it could be met, and the applicant has committed to making those changes. We're confident that it won't change the lot lines or anything related to the plat other than the exact location of the drainage and utility easement. And so just our comment would be that, if you do or are inclined to approve the preliminary plat, we would just recommend that you do that contingent upon meeting the engineers, satisfying the engineer comments on the project.
Okay, thank you.
I believe that is a condition already.
Yeah, it is on there. Yep. Member Yeager, do you have questions?
Yeah, when I read the September 28th Planning Commission minutes, I noticed that there were a lot of resident concerns, cramming lots in, loss of privacy, losing trees. There was a concern about the cul-de-sac not having a through route for biking and walking to get to the Summerfields development, except along busy Kettle River Boulevard. And apparently there is a letter in there that stating that the developer declines to put such a path in unless he is required. Have these concerns that have been brought up, and including the ones that Ms. Land has brought up this evening, been addressed, and how were they resolved?
So, one of the comments was on curb and gutter, that will be put in. You didn't bring it up, Madam Yeager. For the pathway, we determined, and looking back at the prior minutes for the 2006 plat, that they did meet the park dedication requirements. So the plat has already met its dedication requirements, so to have the developer put in a path, it's already been done.
Oh, he's already put in a path?
No. The path would be an improvement that basically the prior developer already paid for that.
Okay,
Or paid the park dedication fees, not the pathway.
okay. So is the path then gonna go in, or?
No, it's not.
It's not. It's that the fees have been paid, it's all over and done with.
Yes, the park part has been taken care of.
All right.
With every development, there's always neighbors that want to have the land look the way it looked when they moved in. And I can understand that. But again, this land was originally developed to have 6 lots on it. It's now gonna have 3, so it's half as dense as it was before. And in trying to make the road go through, that was with the first plan, actually, a couple of the plans that Mr. Beckman tried to make feasible. It just, again, wasn't feasible, both monetarily wise and also to provide enough stormwater for the increase in pervious area that the roadway was gonna provide. So, again, that's where we're at, was with the cul-de-sac.
Okay, there is adequate drainage and whatnot, because I noticed a lot of wetlands around there.
There are a lot of wetlands around there. And actually, the original plat has a 30-acre outlot to the north, which actually was turned into a wetland bank site. So that can never be developed. It'll always be in that green space. So all the 40-plus acres, the original site, 30 of it is already into a permanent environmental easement.
Okay, is that wetland bank, is that visible from Mrs. Land's house? She get to look at the night,
Well, she'd have to look at.
On that side, that's more my
Yeah, she'd have to look,
neighbors.
it's across the street from her.
okay.
So,
But it is an area, again, that wildlife can't be there, will never be.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Weck or Mr. Erickson, I'm not sure who can answer this question. After recently being in a plow truck for 6 hours, the first snowfall, yep. And so my question is this with the cul-de-sac, and I saw a lot of cul-de-sacs, and I saw a lot of where the road just ends and you gotta turn around. So I wanna make sure that this cul-de-sac will allow for snow plowing and because we have a bigger plow, if you will. Chuck's not here, so bigger plow. And then my other concern would be for our fire trucks. So as we get bigger fire trucks, I want to make sure that we're able to, that cul-de-sac is able to handle that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, and we do certainly include our public works staff on our reviews of these preliminary plats. And so we do have general standards for cul-de-sac diameters or radiuses, and it does meet our general standard that does accommodate the turning movements of both fire trucks as well as our snow plows. This particular cul-de-sac, having 3 lots on it, definitely has enough snow storage capability. There wouldn't be really much of an issue to accommodate the plow trucks and storage of snow. It does get a little bit difficult, as you've seen when you're out on a snow plow, when you have houses around all sides of it, and where do you push the snow, right? Because there's limited frontage, driveways consume a large portion of it, mailboxes, where do you put the snow, right? So this one definitely is not much of an issue with that because there's so much area that's not consumed by driveways, but a very good question.
Okay, thank you. I know being in that plow truck for that long of a time, I saw a lot of that, so I'll probably be asking that question a lot during planning commission. So, any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That land, I believe, is it higher than the surrounding And I'm wondering, where is the drainage gonna go? Is it gonna go back to the wetlands? Or with the curb and gutter, will it drain into our sewers?
So it will stay on, so there's a number of stormwater management requirements that they need to meet. And that's one of the areas that the applicant's engineer failed to meet. I had some concerns with that. They didn't meet it. Two, it did flood the proposed driveways in a 10-year rainfall event. And so we were not satisfied with what was submitted from an engineering standpoint. And so there are some areas that we're very confident that can accommodate that. One, I think, and I'm not certain which direction they're gonna go, but one suggestion I had is putting the stormwater management in the rear, not in the front yards of the homes, but in the rear. They already have storm sewer that's proposed to outlet to the rear of the property and into the wetland to the, I'm gonna say to the west. But ultimately, they can put the stormwater pond in the rear and not really increase any length of storm sewer, because that's where the outlet was already. But have that pipe to the rear of the lot where they have a little bit more room to work with stormwater management. They have a little bit larger area to grade and create the size of the basin that they need to meet the stormwater management requirements.
And then another question I had was, you know, this is really a shoehorned, you know, project. I actually commend them for, you know, giving it the shot to try to get this in there, because there's not a lot of land after the wetland. But I do have one concern with the plot or the pad on the southeast side, with the way the cul-de-sac wraps around and moves towards the south, that where the pad is, I am concerned with existing houses, that it does kind of look like it's in the backyard of the other house. Especially with that house having a kind of a, that's your house, I believe.
And then the other neighbor's house too.
Yeah, having it angled. Now, I can't tell by the drawings how far off her property that landing pad is. But I think if two houses are pointed in the same direction and one is behind each other, it kind of creates an unusual look where the houses aren't lined up down a boulevard, where one house is set back farther. And I'm hoping that it's turned in such a way that it isn't looking basically from there, that new house's front yard into Holly's backyard and the back door. Is it close enough that it would do that, or is it far enough away that it wouldn't look like that?
Well, I think that's certainly a fair question. I know that's something that the planning commission and staff had asked them to evaluate and look at a little bit closer. Mr. Weck, I think, has evaluated, and one, I think they meet all the setback requirements, right? And so
Yes, they do.
it's difficult to force them to do something if they already are meeting the setback, all the ordinance requirements. And so I think the applicant is here. Fred, maybe want to or comment on that a little bit further. Maybe you've had
I think-
conversations at the planning commission level that I wasn't at, so.
I think, first off, the building pad is just a pad location, it's not the actual size of the house. So there's an opportunity to move it farther away from the side property line, but the minimum setback from the side property line is 10 feet. And it's the same setback as everyone else in the development. And again, as things develop, you used to have a cornfield behind you, now you have a development, or you used to have a forest, now you've got something else. And I understand also not the way you might want it to be, and I have a lot of times real estate agents telling people when they buy their property, it'll never develop. Well, then 5 years later, the developer comes in and develops it. So unless, the only way you can protect your view is to buy the land, to be honest with you. So the development as proposed does meet the lot sizes, the pads do meet the minimum setbacks. They do meet the minimum requirements of the ordinance for both the subdivision and zoning ordinance.
Well, hopefully they'll keep some harmony with the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea, but it's not something that we should be trying to force.
Yeah, but I can kind of see that from what they've done so far. I kind of feel that that's what's gonna happen, is there's gonna be harmony. And hopefully that,
If the road had gone through as originally planned, she would've looked at two houses right
Yeah.
behind her, so now it's just one house.
yeah, I'm not saying I dislike what's going on. It's probably the least of all the possible evils for that neighborhood.
All right, any other questions or comments? Yes.
I have a question. You mentioned this, like, storm sewer,
Mm-hmm.
like, in the back of their houses. Where is exactly that gonna be placed? Do you have a map?
Mr. Linwood, do you have something you can share on that?
Would it be behind, like you're saying, so
Not the lot that you're adjacent to, but the other two lots in the rear of those two, closer to the large wetland complex further to the west.
further to the west, so you're
Correct.
right on that.
West by a couple hundred feet.
Okay. And then is that public land if it's a storm pond?
There's usually a drainage and utility easement over it, so it is private property with an easement over it for the use of the public drainage purposes. So,
Where,
Mr. Leonard, I think it's page 85.
we have not seen the plan where they're proposing that storm sewer. That's where I suspect it will go, but Mr. Limerick, if you could show, correct, in the area between those two lots.
okay, so not, so it'll go right there, so it'll be part of.
I don't know that it'll go there. We have not seen the revised plans yet, but that's where I would suspect that it may go. And so I think that would be an E area where it would probably most easily accommodate those drainage requirements.
And then another item is, you mentioned your recommendations, if it is approved, to include engineers'
Approval.
approval of the certain recommendations. Can I see those recommendations? Or are they private?
So, no, they're not private, but let's do this if we can.
Correct me where they are.
Yeah, so we
So I don't
can,
take up the meeting, sorry.
there's a folder, we have our folder somewhere that we can, so we'll make sure you get a copy of it before you leave.
Oh, that would be wonderful,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep, no problem.
I was just wondering what those items were. Thank
Yep,
you.
there's 8 of them, so, all right. With that, we need a motion to approve Resolution 22-0108, a resolution approving the preliminary plot, D21-010 for Diamond Ridge by Beckman Custom Homes. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Member Luger makes the first, Mayor Iverson will make the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
So approved. All right, we'll move on to 22, a resolution, to consider Resolution 220109, a resolution authorizing the purchase of 3 Ford Utility Inceptor SUV vehicles for the total amount of $142,735.14. Chief Bauer, will you be presenting this?
Yes, Madam Mayor and members of the council, we're looking at requesting to purchase 3 marked squad vehicles for 2022. The pricing is obviously obtained through our state contract that's for public safety agencies and municipalities. In 2021, in December, there was a vehicle that was involved in a crash. And we're still working with the League of Minnesota Cities and the other driver's insurance to find out the exact amount of what we will recollect from that insurance claim. It will not be 100%. Really depends on what they end up working out. So there is some of that cost that we will recoup. In addition, we will have 3 vehicles that we're anticipating will go to auction this year. Historically, the last one we sent to auction for a police vehicle was about $7,500 that was recovered from the auction. So give or take, that's always it's an auction, so we're never real sure what that's going to recoup, but that will help buffer some of that money that is not recovered from the insurance claim. In addition, the 2 additional vehicles, or 2 vehicles that are due for replacement this year based on our capital improvement plan. One of them is a 2015 Police Interceptor, which has over the 103,000 miles on it as of the time of this letter was written, and then a 2017 with about 83,000 miles on it. These will be decommissioned and sold at auction as well when they hit 100,000 miles. Right now, we heard from Ford, we're looking at about a 4 or 5 month delay. And if we purchase them today, we wouldn't get them till May, or give or take, somewhere in there. So we're looking at each of the purchase of the vehicles is with an extended warranty to cover up to that 100,000 miles. Is right around $47,578,000. And these would be anticipated to be funded from the 2022 Police Capital Improvement Fund.
Chief Bauer, are we down a squad car then with that accident that happened?
Yes.
We're down a squad?
Yes.
So you're having to juggle the squad cars a little bit more than,
Yeah, and
Usual?
usually, they run 7 days a week with
Yeah.
with the way that they're scheduled and the way the officers are scheduled. They're running almost 12 hours a day for 7 days a week. So they do get a lot of miles on them. And what we have, the sergeants usually drive a certain vehicle. They're supplementing by having the officer drive those vehicles that they drive. So, making that work right now.
okay. And Mr. Linwood, this is a continuation of the policies that we've done in our CIP for the last 5, 6, 7, 10 years? I can't
Approximately,
remember.
the rotation plan that we utilize as far as our public safety vehicles and transitioning those, either transition them to fire or even potentially our building department. In this example, as Chief Bauer explained, these two particular vehicles will just be auctioned off due to where we are in that rotation period. But as he stated, the one item will be mostly covered by the League of Minnesota Cities, but and then we can now utilize those auction proceeds, always go back into our CIP fund. So any shortfalls that we may have on that vehicle that was totaled by that accident will be able to be covered by the revenues from those particular three that the two that we would be auctioning.
Okay, perfect. All right. Questions from council, Member Luger.
I have no questions.
Member Onstead?
Looking at the purchasing 3 cars this year, I'm assuming they'll go out of service at about the same time. Will that possibly have a bump in our budget for that year? 6 years down the road?
Sure, right. I'd have to look at the replacement schedule and determine, that is there is some fluidity there that on when we replace those vehicles. This one was if I remember correctly, it's about a year early, so it would be adjusting those things along the way. So it does depend on when, and some of them, as Mr. Linwood said, are then repurposed within the city. I know that these two the two of the vehicles that we're purchasing are intended just to be 3 years, and then we would auction them off, just because once it hits the 100,000 miles, repair costs go up and those type of things.
I think it'd also be fair to say that a year before that or 2 years before that, we're not buying as many vehicles because we have one that's gonna last longer. Granted, it's gonna expire at the same time as the other two.
Sure, and this, my understanding and how I'm looking at this from, just looking at it for the last week or two, is to really maintain minimal repair costs and minimize, once they hit that 100,000 miles, we're trying to phase them out. So we don't have, and that warranty does help cover those expenses. So we're just maintaining tires, brakes, those type of things while we have them. So there, it depends what things look like down the road, whether or not there's how that budget impact would look or that capital improvement would look. But yes, it's an increased cost that hopefully we can cover through these auctions of vehicles this year.
Mr. Linwood, we had 2 cars on for next year, 2023, so that would be the rotation, so we'll go down to 1 at that point in time.
Potentially, I think, Chief Bauer will have an opportunity to analyze that, but that would most likely, like I said, we would look at 2 next year would be the normal replacement, but we'll analyze that with this. Most likely that one will take place of that one in 2023, or excuse me, in 2020. Yes, 2023.
2020, right,
Thank you.
in that budget, yeah, exactly, okay. I will say, Chief Bauer, I didn't realize how hard those squad cars were run until I rode along, and it's amazing. I sit there and go, I can get 300,000 on my car.
Right.
Obviously, that doesn't happen with a police car.
No,
so.
absolutely not. By
Yeah.
the time they hit 100,000 miles, we're ready to move them elsewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds good. All right, Member Yeager.
Last year's cards were hybrids. These cars also hybrids?
Yes.
And last year's cars was a lot lower price. They were only like 43,000 compared to the 47 and a half.
Mhm.
Explanation is why the prices jumped so much?
We're purchasing them from the state contract. We don't have flexibility of where or how much the charges or what the invoices are. I know there was some price increase based on just, inflation rates and those type of things from this year to next year. Overall, we're trying to repurpose. We will pull some of the equipment out of the crash car and repurpose as much of that as possible. which may, give us some buffer here. But in general, we're anticipating that these vehicle costs will continue to increase on an annual basis, just with the trends we're seeing. So our
Okay.
capital improvement have to adjust to that.
And was like 47,000 budgeted for it this year per car?
I believe it was.
That's what I remember seeing on a CIP plan.
I believe that's what it was. That comes to mind as well, yes.
Okay, so we'll have to take from elsewhere to cover the rest of the cost.
And we're hoping that the sale of these vehicles, or the auction of these
It's the third
vehicles.
vehicle, yes, I
Yeah.
gathered that. But I'll tell you, I'm becoming increasingly uncomfortable with paying 47,000 for a vehicle that's only lasting 3 years or 100,000 miles.
And something to keep in mind would be that is the cost of the outfitting as well, when we're adding all the equipment. These don't come from Ford with light bars and all the equipment and the cages and all that thing. There's costs associated with that. And I'd have to look exactly, I don't have that in front of me, but what that looks like. And off the top of my head, I think that's 7,000-8,000 easily for outfitting the squad as well. So, from dealer prices, what you're looking at for a vehicle, it's, these prices are consistent. There's a little variability whether you go look at a Chevy Pursuit vehicle or the Dodge Chrysler product. They're consistently, within a couple $1,000s of each other. Plus, when we stay with the same brand and same vehicle, much of the equipment can be repurposed longer than 3 years. The cages, light bars, all these things, whereas if we, are always adapting every 3 years to, now let's buy the Chargers, now let's buy the Tahoe, those costs would increase as well.
Chief Bauer, just a question on that. Our residents pay taxes to be safe, and part of that money, 51% or 49%, I kind of forget which one, is for public safety. So, to Member Yeager's question, if we didn't replace that squad or stay with the amount of vehicles that we had, what would happen? I mean, we have one less patrol officer. Are we gonna, if we take away from our public safety, then what happens?
Realistically, as I mentioned previously, they're running 12 hours already a day. And, the way the shifts work out, it's not that we, running them 24 hours a day equates to every year and a half we're purchasing vehicles at this cost. So, it's not that there's not an abundance of extra vehicles that are just sitting in the lot. It's their purpose is to run, respond to calls, and they're getting a lot of miles on it. That is kind of the nature of the business, and due to the geographic size of the city of Wyoming, we expect, and there's the anticipation that the officers will be out doing neighborhood patrols. They're checking areas. They're doing these. They're not just stationary, sitting at the PD all day. We expect them to be out and about and be visible, and that does add mileage, and that's kind of the nature of the business.
And to cut cost, I mean, how would you cut costs from vehicles? Would you not have the computers in it? Would you not, how would a city cut a cost on a vehicle if it's the state? How does that work?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know, I'm giving you grace, I know, if there's, being just new to the.
And even so, I'm not sure how, where you're responding to calls,
Yeah.
and ultimately sitting in a parking lot is not what officers are supposed to do.
Right.
They're intended to be out and about and be visible, doing business checks, interacting with the community is important, and that doesn't happen just sitting in our PD's lot out on the east side of the city.
Right, so obviously you can't order a police vehicle for $25,000.
No.
Or you can't, you couldn't even come close to that,
No,
right?
correct.
To do that, all right. So the price is kind of that standard, what the state offers, and
Correct.
the equipment that goes into it. So having to either, one, cut the budget and cut out a police car, which gives us one less patrol car to use, right?
Correct.
So we really don't have a lot in there to be able to do that. So we just have to make sure we're good with our CIP and the budget.
Absolutely, yes, correct.
Perfect. All right, any other questions from council? No, all right. We need a motion to approve Resolution 2022-0109, a resolution authorizing the purchase of 3 Ford Utility Inceptor SUV vehicles for the total amount of $142,735.14. I will make that first motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Number 23, to consider Resolution 22-0110, a resolution approving Wald Architecture to complete design development for a public safety facility in the amount of $171,000. Mr. Linwood, are you taking this?
Mayor, I will start. We actually both have Mr. Jonathan Lewis and Mr. Page. Are you going to be participating well? And they're going to give a brief discussion on this item tonight. So I don't know if you guys would like to come up or to the podium to discuss this item. So in your packet, Mr. Lewis has prepared a memo to discuss this, where we're at in the process for the facility and the next steps as far as the design development.
Thanks, Rob.
You're welcome.
I don't think the mic is on though, is it? Do we want to test it just to make sure?
It says on.
Is it on?
Can you hear me?
Can you guys, are we good? Can the audience hear as well? I'm just, yes, no, maybe?
I'm good at talking loud, so
You'll use your dad
we'll
voice.
see how it goes.
Sounds good.
As Rob said, we've got a proposal in here, essentially generated by our last council budget session, motivated by us talking through just where we've been with schematic design, and we kind of look at that as kind of the research and discovery phase of a project. So we really know kind of what the basic layout of the floor plan is. We know the basic layout of the site, and we have a lot of the relationships that we needed based on our meetings with the core planning group, with public safety. And so it's kind of at the point where we're trying to get a little bit more detail in that design effort. The other thing that I think we talked about at that budget session certainly was that we kind of know where the numbers are now. You know, when we come up with these concepts early on in the master plan, they're based on a lot of broad assumptions in terms of cost per square foot and things like that. We've reached the point now where I think we know a little bit better about what the cost of this facility is gonna be. And that's also affected by certainly some of the unprecedented inflation rates and things like that. And so when we find that spot where we say, okay, we know what the budget is, we've done our research to understand how the building is gonna fit on a specific site, how it's gonna be configured, and you know, really the basic size of that facility, then we say, okay, now it's time to kind of move forward into that next piece. And so that's what this proposal lines out, is just completing the design development phase. So previously, schematic design is about 15% of our overall design effort. Design development is about 20%. And so, you know, at the end of this, we'll have gotten to about, or not about, exactly 35% of what we would say is our design effort. And the next phase, that design development piece, is really to get a lot more detail into what we found in schematic design. And so we look at building at elevations, we look at specific materials, we look at just the relationship within a space itself and how it works for specific users. So there's a lot of those kind of internal and external meetings that happen a lot. And then just looking forward after design development, that would be the construction documents phase. And that's where we're actually putting a lot more detail into the drawings to help a contractor build that set of drawings. So that's where there's a lot more detailed effort that goes into that last portion of the design phase. But the design development phase is really the critical piece in meeting with users and staff that are gonna actually be using the facility, so that we can really determine what it's gonna look like, how it's gonna feel, and how it's gonna function. And then we have to move into that construction documents phase to make sure that somebody can actually build it. So that's kind of my synopsis, and I think Paige could go into a little bit more detail too on some of those critical items.
Yeah, so I mean, when you think about it, it's really, as Jonathan said, we're gonna place light switches, and we're gonna talk about where the actual desks are gonna go, you know, the big
So we heard a little bit earlier from Chief Bauer that our evidence room currently is a challenge.
Correct.
So if we can talk just a little bit about this new one. First of all, for everybody in the audience, I want you to know, just a reminder that this is not taking any property off of the tax rolls, off of property taxes. This is something that the city has owned, and we want to put the police and fire department there. So with that, if you can maybe explain a little bit about that evidence room, and there's no set numbers, but how many years out can that hold, or how many items can that hold? Because my understanding is there's some folding, like accordion type shelves kind of thing in that, so.
Good detail. I
Yeah.
can certainly let Paige take that one.
Yeah, so, we are planning for a high-density storage system, which is that kind of folding. So what it is, it's a storage system. You see it a lot of times in like archive-type places. So it's a system that can open up. It actually is on a track and it rolls open, and so you have an aisle that you can walk through. But then all the other shelving systems are just back-to-back, and you can't walk through those. So then when you need to get to another shelf, you just kind of roll the shelves over. So there's only one aisle, and there's, maybe 10 shelves. So instead of having 10 or 11 aisles, you get just one aisle. So it's a huge space saver. We do it in almost all the police stations that we work with. And then they stack really high as well, like 7 feet high. So it's a great thing that we're planning for. It's gonna really improve the situation for the police folks.
Perfect, all
Yeah,
right.
and I'll touch on just a couple more things there too that you talked about, Mayor, is that we have to look at just the projections of growth of the city and make sure that we're planning for that. And so not only are we looking at potentially larger police force potentially in the future and making sure that we can accommodate that. I think the other thing is that one might ask, well, why wouldn't we just do high density shelving in the space that we have to take advantage of the small space? Well, the issue is it's so heavy that you need like a thickened slab and things like that, so it just really wouldn't accommodate that type of storage system. So again, getting into a little bit of detail, but it just tells you kind of all of the different efforts that have to go into planning, and evidence storage is a great space to use as an example of what do we have to talk about with the specific users to understand how they want it to function and what it'll look like in the future.
Great, thank you. Mr. Linwood, the $171,000, where are we getting that from?
Right now, that would be out of our capital revolving fund, but then, once again, as we did earlier for the schematic design, this could be a reimbursable cost if the council were to move forward with that move forward to the actual construction of the facility once we get to that point. So right now, as of right now, that's where those funds would be allocated though from.
Okay, great, thank you. So, Member Yeager, questions?
Does this additional 171,000 commit the city to going forward with this project?
I think that's up to the city council as you go through this, the design development. You obviously have had a component for the schematic design, I think of approximately, give or take, 85,000. So this is obviously a bigger step forward on this particular project as far as going through that design development. It doesn't say that we have to move forward with anything if we do this step and design it. The city council has that ability to stop with the project at any point in time.
Right, but, now we're up to about, $300,000 on the table? And is it realistic to think that the city would stop at 300, would put 300,000 out and then walk away?
I think that's probably more for the council members to discuss that amongst you. At the end of the day, it's the council that will approve, or, if you'll continue to approve this component tonight, or if you feel at some point that you don't want to move forward with it, or if you want to move forward with the full construction of the facility. So you're right, though, there's 171 plus 85,000 here, so approximately $250,000 you'll have invested within this portion of this. So that is obviously a significant amount of money, and I don't think anyone up at the dais, the council member, takes that as a small amount of money as we've gone through this process. But we've been having this process ongoing for approximately the last year, and I think the council has been thoughtful and thorough in regards to how we proceeded with this. And I think our architects have done a nice job as they prepare documents and as we've incrementally moved forward on this. And I think it's been a slow process. So This is where we are right now in the process, so that would be for the council to make a decision tonight on the design development if they'd like to keep moving forward.
You see, my concern is, as I said before, the affordability of this project on our taxpayers and whether, I mean, when I'm looking at our retirees and people on Social Security and fixed incomes, which I soon will be, you know, the cost, the tax increases involved, it just like scare the crap out of me, to be honest, and to put it bluntly. So that's my concern with it. I mean, I would consider a more modest project, but I realize that my colleagues do not, do not want a more modest project, so just voicing my concern.
Couple questions, going on to Councilmember Yeager's question. What would be a more modest building? I mean, we're pretty nuts and bolts, right? So what could we cut down to help the appetite for Councilmember Yeager?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that we've looked at is a small percentage of growth within the city, and so planning for a few additional staff spaces and things like that is about the only thing that we've really talked about where there's some additional space that's not going to be necessarily used on day one. But the reality is that when a lot of these departments are going from paper file storage to digital, they use those spaces right away, and then they start digitizing it, and then they clear it out so that when those staff do come, now there's a spot for them. So it even tends to get used day one. The other thing I would say is that, if there was an option of, some of the other options we looked at before of reusing existing buildings or something like that, but I think, we've been through those discussions with the planning group, with the council to determine that, the existing facilities just aren't viable to help support the departments that, the way that they currently function.
So if we look at the fire department part of it, because they'll be together, and as this city grows and buildings get taller, and the need for a fire truck to service our city based on the growth, we currently would not be able to purchase that or have a place to house $1 million fire truck based on what we have now.
Right, and maybe you're getting at the fact that there is a planned purchase for a fire truck
Correct.
in the future that it doesn't fit in here, so yeah, it's, that is problematic.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Okay,
And I'd just like to add to that, Mayor, I think Jonathan mentioned it last time we were here, was just, police and fire stations, they have certain spaces that are just inherent with the type of building that they are. So the apparatus bays, they're big spaces, it's big vehicles. The evidence storage, you need those spaces. So it's really, it's just those staff offices that are really what, can fluctuate. But when you're planning for just minimal growth like we are, it's difficult to plan extra space.
yeah. And we also, isn't in the plan of that building too, is a storm shelter, or it's like, I mean, it's built for a tornado to come through or whatever, and people can go in there and you're safe, right? It's in there, so we couldn't get rid of that, because that's
Correct.
pretty important to have,
Yeah.
right, into that shelter piece, so, okay, and we don't have an exercise room in it right now. We're not planning an exercise room or sleeping quarters right now, correct?
No, we're not. I think the other thing is, again, topics that have come up in past meetings with council and the core planning group is just the number of shared spaces we're looking at too. If we're gonna build a separate fire station and then say, okay, build a public safety facility later, or maybe it's some other sequence of events there, if they're two separate buildings, they don't have the opportunity to share the space. And that's, I think, something that's been, at the core of something we've tried to accomplish throughout this whole process. And so there's really a good chunk of that building that is shared by all of public safety. It's not just for fire and it's not just for police. So I think there's a huge benefit in the efficiency of that facility for that.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Linwood, we haven't gone as far as how the tax is gonna increase, if there is gonna be a tax increase. We don't even know that yet, correct? So that's kind of getting the cart before the horse.
Right, I mean, some of the original, as part of our long-term plan, we factored in some of the potential facility costs within our long-term planning and budget, but, you know, right now, we're at the component of this is the design development. Like I said, we've been trying to do this incrementally, not to just go ahead and forward and do everything all at once, so, but certainly as we go through that, there is a cost to this, and we'll look at different avenues while only the city, and certainly we may look for legislative opportunities as well to see if there's funding available. We'll certainly search those out if they are.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Other questions, Member Onstead?
You know, I'm in agreement that I don't want to spend a lot of money. You know, I worry about the future and how much money I'll have, you know, as a citizen. But would it also be true to say that, you know, if we build the proper building right now, that we're not having to rebuild in 20 years or 15 years or even 10 years if the city expands, that we're actually saving money to do it properly and do it now rather than down the road?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at just inflation, the longer you wait to build something, the more expensive it gets, so that's kind of a given, but, yeah, like you said, it's, to just sit on it and not do anything, becomes a detriment really to, the community as well, where they're not getting the service that they, come to expect, so. So does that answer the question?
Yes, it does.
All right, Member Luger?
Kind of. I have a follow-up question. So we know that our facilities they're just not adequate, which is a disservice to our employees, it's a disservice to our residents. We need upgrades desperately, and we know that they're gonna be an investment. Can you at all quantify, assuming that even at an incremental rate, that where we work really hard to not do everything at once and have it be an enormous amount, but even if we take, kind of the scope of doing something incrementally, if we wait 20 years, even using that same incremental approach, can you quantify about how much it costs at that point versus how much it costs when we get started now?
Yeah, it's a fairly straightforward calculation if we look back in time at what inflation has been. Generally speaking, and I haven't done math recently, but generally speaking, every 10 to 15 years, your price will double. So if you're looking at 20 plus years, it could be potentially twice the cost of what we're looking at today.
Mr. Lucen, I think too, just for everyone's, that'd be construction inflation, not just the inflation that we're talking about right now, a combination, and I think the construction, just to make that clear for everyone.
Correct, thanks, Rob.
Okay, we do have a question. Just state your name.
Nancy Spangler, Wyoming.
Yep.
Over time, our population is growing, which means our tax base is growing as well. Plus the people that have to be serviced by the fire department and the police are growing, so the department will probably have to grow as well.
Correct. Yeah.
True.
Yeah, that's correct. So we do, the city, I say sometimes that I don't know if we're gonna grow more than 15,000. We're at 8,000 right now, right? And we do have some projects hopefully that'll come through in the next 4 years or by the time we start this, right? That'll help that. But to your point, Mrs. Spangler, we will have more residents to help pay for it. We will also have hopefully more businesses to help pay for that as well. So that will decrease that. And to what Mr. Linwood had pointed out, we will do whatever we can to try to get some funding from the state to help with it. And there will be some things that come along with that if we do get bonding for it. But overall, if we don't do it, we are not ADA compliant in any of our buildings. Our evidence room obviously is an issue. So if we wait any longer than that, we open ourselves up to lawsuits, is really what it comes down to.
And isn't part of the reason why more citizens would come and businesses would come is because we have that for them?
I can only tell you from what I see and driving around the state of Minnesota. It seems like the cities that are growing, I think of St. Michael, I think of Monticello, they have new buildings. And I think residents like to see that we're taking care of our public safety and that we're giving them a safe environment, which means that we're also providing the services that our residents expect from public safety. So you are correct with that. Yes. All right, any other follow-up questions? All right, we need a motion. Thank you. All right. We need a motion to approve Resolution 22-0110, a resolution providing walled architecture to complete design development for a public safety facility in the amount of $171,000. I'll make that first motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second motion by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
So approved. All right, we will go to council reports, and we'll start with Member Lugar.
I have no reports. There was no quorum for the Park Advisory Commission meeting last night, so thank you all for coming.
Great, thank you. Member Onstad?
I attended the planning commission last week, and I appreciate having a big crowd here tonight, relatively speaking.
Yeah. Member Yeager?
I have no report. Thank you all for coming, and thank you all for watching.
And my only report is we had our retirement party for Chief Hoppy. We're excited to have Chief Bauer sitting in with us now and ahead of our department. So I think that was our big event. I don't remember, we had the Fire Relief Association meeting. Trying to think if there was anything else. So I think that was it. We appreciate everybody being here tonight and with the great questions that we had. So with that, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. We have a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye. We are adjourned at 8:20.